And welcome again to Around the Ozark Spotlight. Each week, we uncover the stories behind the people who live and work here in Southwest Missouri. Those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others, or even put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Today, we're exploring the world of local music with Tery O'Shell. Tery's the development manager, which is a fancy name for the person who has to raise the cash, with the
True.
Springfield Symphony Orchestra. And hello, Tery. Welcome.
Hello, Scott. Thank you for having me.
It's I always love talking to folks that have to do developmental work as far as raising money because it really is not an easy task. But I think your task is a little easier since you've got a wonderful organization that you work with.
Oh, absolutely. And it all depends. I've been in the nonprofit development field for over 20 years, and it's not about the development person, it's about the programs that the nonprofit offers and the services that we do. And we have such a fabulous symphony here that it's not easy, but it makes my life a little bit easier by working for such a great organization.
Well, I'm not sure developing developing folks to give up hard-earned cash is ever easy, but
No.
one of the things that we talk about, and just to give people a little backstory, I've had the privilege of serving the board for the Springfield Symphony now for almost 8 years, and I'm one of the rare ones that don't play an instrument. I've always tried. I'm kind of learning the ukulele here, but for me, I was in chorus in high school, and also I've always had a special place in my heart for some of the famous, more famous writers like Chopin and Brahms and all that sort of thing. But also, one of the takes that I'd like to explore a little bit is we talk about live music all the time, but in Springfield, the symphony orchestra I think sometimes goes unthought of for live performances, and so it's one thing to enjoy the classics; it's another just to enjoy music.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned about that you didn't play an instrument because I think there's a perception out there that I'm only going to like the symphony or go to the symphony because I like classical music or I play the violin. And that's not true. And especially with our conductor, Kyle Wally Pickett, he does such a great job of diversifying the programming. So, yes,
Hmm.
he's going to have Beethoven's Fifth, but he's also going to bring in some and play a composition composed by a Thailand composer with two very ancient instruments. So I think everyone that comes to the symphony needs to leave their perceptions at the door and come in with an open mind because I think you're going to be very much surprised. And one other thing I have to say is you talk about live music. This is our 90th season, and we've been providing Southwest Missouri for 90 years live
Hmm.
performance. And that's through war, any kind of economic downfalls, and of course, lately the pandemic. So we've been here to educate and to entertain for a while. And I think we're going to be here for another 90 years.
My guest today on Around the Ozark Spotlight is Tery O'Shell. Tery, the development manager with the Springfield Symphony Orchestra. There seems to be. You raise a good point. Sometimes there's a division between do I like classical music
Mhm.
or do I see it for the pop shows that we do as well? And I'm sometimes think the lines are blurred between those two. You can agree to disagree with me, but I think these days, when you do a show, say the greatest hits of John Williams, a composer like John Williams,
Right,
famous for all of his Star Wars themes and
right.
Jurassic Park and all the things that
Mhm.
he's been involved in. Anybody who's never been introduced to classical music, and I'm afraid probably not as many people as we'd like to think have
Right.
been introduced to that music. That to them, arguably, I think, is classical music.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think, and there is, I believe, as you do, that between pops concerts or premium, as we call them sometimes, and classical, there is a degree of blurriness. Um, just imagine this. For example, let's say you went to go see Star Wars, but the music was not played. There was no soundtrack to it. You
Hmm.
would view that movie totally differently. And
No
so
question.
and I think music connects people, and whether it's classical or pops or however you want to define the two. But I'm with you. I mean, I think when people hear the Star Wars theme, Out of Africa theme, and all that, they think
Mhm.
it's classical, and which it is. And so that tells you it's not just Beethoven. I mean, it's
Right.
modern composers that are composing classics, as we call it. And as pops as well. I mean, we just had Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel come and stuff. Well, that was written in the 40s. So is it really pops, or is it just? I know technically by definition it is, but it was written a while ago.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And the thing that many of our listeners and viewers aren't aware of is when we do a show like Carousel, that
mhm,
costs money.
it does.
When you do something by Beethoven or Brahms or Mozart, those guys are dead, and you don't have to pay anybody any royalties. But when you do something from a composer who or composers that are either still alive
Correct.
or they're still being represented by
Mhm.
music unions or whoever, we've got to pay a fee.
We do. And I'm glad you brought that up because in my encounters with potential sponsors and stuff and patrons, people don't realize that we have to pay rent to Hammonds. Our musicians are professional musicians, so they are paid.
Hmm.
And basically, the revenue that we bring in from ticket sales it depends on the concert. It would only cover probably 20 to 25% of the expenses for that one concert. Now, that
Hmm.
doesn't include our outreach or our education programs or our behind the baton or all the other stuff that we bring to the table as a symphony. So that's where I come in. I have to raise the money to fill in the 80% to 75% gap that our earned revenue doesn't bring in.
Sure. And getting to the money point, if you were to look at what it cost to put the symphony together 50 or 60 or even 90 years ago versus today, we have an active budget of what?
1.4 million.
$1.4 million. And keep in mind that not only employs everybody in your office, but
Right.
it also employs a conductor who, just like a great baseball player, there's other
Yeah,
teams that are looking for chances to find good players, right?
absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. He's our home run guy.
Sure, and then the players have
Mhm.
are competitive as well. We've got many that play here, and they also play for other symphonies like Topeka
Exactly. Exactly.
and what northwest or northeast,
They
northwest Arkansas, right?
Yeah, we had actually sometimes we've had them come in as far as Atlanta, New York City. We because of Kyle too, we are developing a name within the orchestra industry, and so
Hmm.
and we do have auditions every single year. They're blind auditions, so you don't know if they're female, male. They're behind a curtain, so all you hear is the music,
Right.
and they come in from South Carolina, San Francisco. They come over from both ends, east and west, and it's not cheap because we have to house them. We have
Hmm.
to our pay gas, and so while you're sitting there enjoying these. And not just our musicians that we bring in, but the guest musicians. We had to pay the musicians from Thailand.
Sure.
So but it's all part of us of our mission, and our mission is to bring quality symphonic music to Southwest Missouri,
Hmm.
and that's what drives us. We can be flexible in other things, but we're not flexible in our mission of bringing entertainment, live music to the Ozarks.
Well, we've talked about that a little bit too, about how important the arts are. We've got a city on the sign when you drive in and out of the city that says 170,000, but the greater retail area for Springfield is closer to a half a million. And when you look at a city that size, and we're in competition with other cities this size to get good medical, good education, good community leaders, and good business leaders, you've got to provide the arts.
You do, you do, and it's very much an economic driver for any kind of not just for a company to come in and maybe put their roots down here, but also for employees. All the and isn't I mean we hire more. The economic imprint or footprint that we do on this area in this community
Mhm.
is much larger than I think people think it is. It's into the millions, like 27 million that we bring in every year. And we're not talking about just Branson. We're talking about the art museum Museum here. We're talking about, SLT, Springfield Little Theater, the Symphony. For the size of the city that we are, and the quality that the arts community brings to this area is pretty amazing. I mean, with the Spires family alone, with the opera, we are very fortunate to have the quality that we do in a 170 to with the larger scale 500,000 population.
Sure. Well, you've got a great venue.
We do.
Hammond's Hall is a beautiful, beautiful venue, and a great place to watch a concert. Although we have talked behind the scenes about maybe coming up with some other places that we could feature the symphony as well.
Well, we've gone to, yes, exactly. We've gone to Branson. We're always working within the community in the city to find ways that we can expose ourselves to everyone. We do a really good job with our concerts that we have at Hammond's Hall. We have all very diverse audience. We have a great pay scale on our price scale on the tickets. You can get something from 35 to 60, a good range. We offer discounts to college students. We try to be there for everybody, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So we try to go into the schools, or we do Symphony or the Move, or we did the Ozark Mountain Daredevils 2 years ago. And we've even talked to the city about doing something maybe at Hammond's Field. We're always looking at areas where someone maybe feel a little bit more comfortable coming to an amphitheater than they do to Hammond's Hall, but we want to be there for them. We're probably going to partner with the Art Museum in the future. So we're always trying to be out there for everybody.
My guest you're hearing and viewing today is Tery O'Shell. Tery is the development manager with, I see on my screen here, Tery, you didn't put O'Shell on there. You only put Tery, but
okay.
That's quite all right. Not a big deal, but she's the development manager with the Springfield Symphony Orchestra. Very humble. Tery's very humble. Now, you've only lived in Springfield a little less time than I have. I moved here in 2016.
I moved
from a cold weather climate.
Yeah.
And you moved here in 2018.
Right.
From a warm weather climate.
From New Orleans, so yes.
Okay. And differences?
Probably, well, think about it. Yes, with New Orleans, but the people are very friendly. My first trip here, my husband was already here because we moved for his work. We were walking down C Street. Someone heard me make the comment about visiting here, possibly moving, and they just immediately just started talking to me. And you don't get that camaraderie as much in New Orleans just because of the background. There's so many tourists and stuff. The fact that when I first moved to Louisiana, I had a 7-foot alligator in a pond in my backyard, and 2 snakes get in my house. It's much better here.
Well, we did have a python. We had a python thing that happened. Maybe it was the year before you got here, but somebody was raising a python down in the Rogersville area that got away.
Oh, no.
And my wife heard that story, and she's like, "I'm not coming there." And I said, "Well, honey, it's a python. It's a long ways from where we live, and not a problem." So they can be found here. The good thing is I haven't heard or seen a gator anywhere. I don't think those are.
No, you're not going to see them. And but there was the cobra scare, right?
Yeah.
That happened here years ago, which was funny. Somebody told me that when I first came down here, and I was like, "Cobras? What are you talking about?" But it's a wonderful community. Really
you never know what people do that way. And you mentioned the Ozark Daredevils. We had talked on the board for a long time about how can we take our symphony and do what other rock acts have done, and that is try to combine them.
Yes.
And we were able to. I think it took about a year and a half, 2 years to get that together. But not only were we able to combine the Springfield Symphony with the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, but they had to write the music as well.
They had exactly. They had to work on taking the music and converting it to symphonic. And if not, it's just not an easy task. And this is how many songs were there? 8 or 9? And so how you think about you're incorporating violins, the strings, the winds, and all that. And so you have to write it to accommodate those musicians. And it took about a year and a half I think COVID kind of set it back a little bit, but for everything to be where it was. And the collaboration was absolutely fabulous. I think it introduced some of our patrons to the Ozark Mountain Daredevils live, but it also, their fans were introduced to the symphony. And the
Well,
symphony.
let's talk about the patron chair when we get back in a moment with more on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Back in just a minute.
Hey, everybody, it's Ethan and Sarah Forhetz from your favorite podcast, Around the Ozarks in 5. I'm sure you've been wondering, how can I get even more amazing stories, events, and witty banter to start my day?
Well, look no further. Here we are. Sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll have what's going on around the Ozarks right at your fingertips each weekday morning.
Yeah, just go to aroundtheozarks.com, click on the newsletter tab to sign up.
Thanks for listening to Around the Ozarks in 5. We hope to see you in your inbox soon.
Welcome back to the second half of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier. With me is Tery O'Shell. Tery, the development manager with the Springfield Symphony Orchestra. We were talking about in the first half of the show, one of the big highlights of the last couple of years was the Ozark Mountain Daredevil Springfield Symphony presentation of their music with a symphony in the background, which is obviously atypical for them. I don't think they'd ever done that before.
Never.
And I know that they're excited about possibly doing it again, so hopefully we'll have that happen. But it was so different. But we talk about the patrons all the time, and I happen to head up the audience development committee, and one of our biggest charges are how do we get more people in the Springfield area involved in understanding what we talked about in the first half of the show, and that is it's not simply I think there's a preconceived notion that somehow when you use the word symphony, people think tuxedos or flowing gowns or what have you. You may see that in New York. I lived in New York. You go to Symphony Hall in New York. Yeah, you're going to see that. But in Springfield, it's live music, and many of the musicians live and work other jobs, day jobs in and around the Springfield area. So when people come, sure, there's people in ties and dresses, and there's people here in sweaters and slacks, and there's people here in,
Jeans.
work clothes, jeans, and boots. They really want to experience the live music.
Mm-hmm. And I agree totally. And it is getting even more diverse as we move on. Symphonies as an industry have always had that stigma or stereotype, like, oh, it's only, it's formal, this, that, and the other. But it's not. And it goes back to, I think, Kyle has done a really good job of trying to talk to every single income bracket, every single age group. Not all of our audience is old. We get the young ones. I mean, the symphony makes a perfect date night for in your 20s and 30s.
Sure.
And and then of course last year for our November concert we had a Beatles cover band. And I didn't think I'd ever see at Hammond's during a symphony concert people holding their phones up lit singing Hey Jude. And that was every age group too.
Absolutely. Well, I think it helps that we have a conductor, Kyle Wiley-Pickett, who's got a young family. And, they keep, he and his wife keep him grounded as to what is going on in his demographic, which quite frankly is younger than my demographic, probably older than your demographic. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's right in the center, and he has a sense for what is going on in that center group. What are they looking for? The kind of music that's appealing to them. Exactly. And he also has a taste and a flavor for not only the pop music, but classical music that could be relevant to that group.
And we recently was attending a conference, and it was a national of all the orchestras in the U.S. And some of the female composers, that they were promoting, that some of the Houston Orchestra and the Chicago have never used. We've already had them here, and we've performed their compositions. So he has he has his hands on not just what's happening now, but I think he has a good view of the future and what he can bring to here to bring diversification to. We may not be the most diverse city around, but we do try to bring diversification so their audience will enjoy it. We're going to always have the classics, but then he always throws in a surprise sometimes, even for the classical series, that it is extraordinary, and you learn from it. And I think it makes you kind of appreciate the Beethovens and the Tchaikovsky's works when you hear the newer ones coming out. As I said, the last half, composers of classical music are not dead. Not all of them are dead. They're happening right now too.
No, that's correct, and that's what keeps it so hip.
Mhm.
I love to use the word hip, but I think it could be very hip.
It is.
And as I say, if you're in love with, uh, personally, I love French horns. Where the heck are you going to hear French horns unless you're at the symphony? And I think there's a lot of folks like me that have a thing for certain instruments. My wife, it's a piccolo. She played the flute in high school, but she loves the piccolo. We've had a couple of concerts the last couple of
Right.
months
Mhm.
where piccolos were featured, or the harp. So it's
Right.
you can narrow it all the way down to that kind of music. I mean, we just did the program Carousel, so we
Mhm.
had live stage acting, right,
Yes.
incorporating student
You
actors
see?
from all
Yeah,
three
MSU.
colleges.
No, just MSU. It was
Just
MSU Theater
MSU.
and
Okay.
Dance. Yeah.
So we had the players coming from MSU, the university, and then accompanied by the orchestra, which I know that's not easy to do because the music has to work with with the acting. But I think at the end of the day, it's great fun for everybody there. The
Oh, yeah.
audience loved it. I mean, it was so different.
And you've seen, we do collaborate with St. Louis Ballet, which is a
Hmm.
huge thing. We actually go there and perform, and they come here and perform. It's not it's not unusual, but it's not very common for a live orchestra to perform with a ballet because if one's off, it'll get all the dancers off and the musicians off. So it's a
Sure.
very hard feat to bring, and this will be the third year we're doing it, and it sells out every time. But I mean, that just shows you. I mean, we've had Swan Lake, we're going to have Cinderella coming this time. When they're coming, they're going to be dancing to show tunes like Gershwin and stuff. But that
Mhm.
is, how many times do you get to really see that, like an orchestra that for a with a ballet from a larger city to come down because they work so well with us. And so that's a good testament to Springfield as a whole, because thank you. The city supports it, the patrons support it. It's a sellout every time, but also to the symphony and to Kyle as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things, it's unfortunate, this program will air and be heard after the Christmas program this year, which is
Yeah,
coming up on this Saturday night.
correct.
And we're really looking forward to that because of the singing group that'll be featured, which do some other shows around the city, but they're amazing. And to hear them with the orchestra, I can't wait. I mean,
Mhm.
and it's sold out. So, it's one of the times when, which is becoming more and more prevalent. And one of the reasons I wanted to do today's program was to talk about why it's important to get tickets early, because some of these events do sell out. I personally, I'm surprised all of them don't sell out, only because the music is so good. But when we do the featured events,
Mhm.
like the Christmas show this year, those things sell out ahead of time.
They do, and we'll tell people will call the week of and say, hey, how do I get my tickets? And it's like, you've got to go earlier. And we start promoting the next concert right after the previous ones, just to give people time to go to Hammond's and pick up good seats, because you want good seats there too.
Mhm.
Going back to the December concert, we were talking about how there's classic, but then there's pop. We're going to have Ave Maria being sung along with Jingle Bells.
Mhm.
And so it's a great mix of all your favorite holiday, and not just the Springfield Mid American chorus group, but also soprano Jennifer Fournier is going to be also featured with the symphony. So, but not all of our concerts are sold out. Going back to what you said,
Mhm.
and we compete with everything. We compete with basketball. We compete, with any other way to entertain your family on a Saturday night.
Sure. Well, Saturday night's movie night, dinner out night, yeah,
Absolutely.
any number of things. But
Yeah.
again, for an area that I'm amazed at the amount of musical talent that's in and around Springfield. It really reminds me of it. You could appreciate this moving here from someplace else as well. I did a lot of business in Nashville in the
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
And I was down in Nashville quite a bit. I was living at the time in New York and in Detroit, but we had a lot of business down in Nashville. Nashville was a sleepy music city, the home of country music.
Mhm.
It had already moved from country western to country by that time,
Mhm.
but nothing like it is today. And
No,
believe me when I say I'm not suggesting I want Springfield to turn into the next Nashville,
no,
because
no.
it's
I don't
it's
want to
it's
drive through.
everything. Yeah, it's everything that we like about Springfield. They
Yeah.
lost that now in Nashville,
Yeah.
but going back to what it was like in the 90s there and what it is in Springfield today, it seems to me there's a lot of parallels.
It is that's funny you say that because my brother lives in Nashville, and so I'm very familiar with it. And he moved there in the '90s, and so or probably the late '80s. But I get totally what you're saying. When I moved here, I thought this reminds me of Nashville, but God knows I don't want it to become that like you. But I mean, look back even farther into our past when we had what was it, Ozark Jubilee, and that was, I mean, that almost evolved into what the opera was. I mean, Springfield was competing with Nashville back then, even.
Right.
And so the fact, and the fact that the proximity we are to Branson, it makes perfect sense to me that live music is popular here. That's what we grew up on in Springfield and stuff. So it does. And I would say too, I mean, the quality of, like you said, of our artists, our performers here, they're right up there with the best in my view. I mean, they're just, we're just a little bit smaller budget than Nashville's, and we're just not quite as big yet, but we are going to get there and stuff. But yeah, I totally
but the offerings are there. That's the beauty of it. I mean, we do have all these things. Now, 90 years of the symphony in Springfield is a milestone. That's a huge milestone. On my desk at work, I actually have an album from 1986 of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra.
Oh,
and I've made some recordings for some of the other board members. I think Jennifer has one as well. But it's amazing to see the orchestra then and to hear the orchestra now. I mean, it sounded great then, but it's come a long way, and that's just in the last 40 years.
Exactly. And we've grown too. I mean, I don't know how many actual members we had of the orchestra back then, but I mean, some of our concerts go anywhere from 60 to 80 musicians that play with it. So we're growing as far as the capacity of talent that we can bring. And a lot of that's too because of Hammonds. I mean, we started playing in Central High School or Drury, and because Hammonds Hall was built, it allowed us to grow too physically. We had to do some flexibility and some pivoting, as everybody says, during COVID. But you know what? Somebody told me we had to reduce the number of musicians who play due to the guidelines, the seating guidelines and stuff, how far you had to be apart. And I had more patrons tell me, but the quality never diminished. So you had fewer musicians, but they played pieces that were just as hard and just as complex, but it never diminished at all. And I think that's probably one of the best compliments we can have.
That first winter of COVID, we would travel with some friends down to southern Texas in January to try to get away from, or February, try to get away from some of the cold weather. And of course, hit that ice storm. So we didn't get away from it very far. But we picked up a magazine. I think it was either Austin or San Antonio, their version of 417 magazine. Okay. And it talked about their symphony playing online 3 or 4 members. And making themselves available to anybody that wanted to watch or enjoy the symphony.
Yes.
And here we were in Springfield with, players that had gone out of their way to get specific things they could put on their instruments to try to help, keep airflow from each other. And like you say, the spaced seating, and allowed live performances. I mean, I think we were one of 4 or 5 in the country that was doing live performances. And it's a real credit to Kyle to do that, to Jennifer and leading that, Jennifer Cotner-Jones, and you all to keep our customers, our supporters involved in what we were doing. I don't know that we really took a step back that year. It seems to me we had revenue targets that were significant. And we were able to do a pretty darn good job at meeting those revenue targets.
We did. Also, too, and the community has to be given a thank you and be credited for helping us. A lot of our season ticket holders, because we had to space how people were seated, so they didn't. Some of them did not want to attend just because of health reasons. Some of them did not have their seats that they normally would because we had to leave them empty. And probably 99.9% said, you know what, we offered to give them a refund. And they were like, you know what, you keep it. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Yeah. And so without their help, that was a very gutsy decision what Kyle and Jennifer made. But without the community understanding and stuff like that, we probably could not have done it. Going back to the accommodations that we had to do, I was wondering one time why there were so many puppy pads in the office. And I was like, why do we have puppy pads? And it was because the wind instruments, there would be saliva coming out. And so we came up with the idea, well, let's put puppy pads down so they could grab them real fast, dispose of them.
Sure.
So people have no clue what really was going on behind the scenes during those COVID concerts, but that's okay.
We're running out of time. You want to quickly tell folks how they can get tickets?
Yes, you can go for single tickets. Please go to Juanita K. Hammond's Hall. We do not at the office sell individual tickets, but go, as Scott said, if you're wanting tickets for this Saturday, I hope you can find them, but try to go early. We're January, February, March, April, and then May is the final one with the St. Louis Ballet. And if you want, yesterday was Giving Tuesday, and just because it was Wednesday doesn't mean you can't give to us. And I would be remiss in my job if I'd have said, if I didn't mention that. So you call, I'm only Tery here. So if you ask for Tery at the symphony, they'll know who to give it to.
I want to thank my guest, Tery O'Shell, today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Also, my producers, Taylor Dempster and Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us today. If you happen to miss all or part of today's program, you can find it at ATO Spotlight on the AroundTheOzarks.com website. You can YouTube us, Facebook, Instagram, or X, or our new app for ATO, which can be found in Apple apps or Android apps. I'm Scott Meier. Remember, every day is a gift. Enjoy it. Have a great day.